Welcome to the Jaron Jarvis channel. I am Jaron Jarvis. Today, I would like to introduce to you, LONNIE'S coffee. I've known Lonnie for longer than I'm willing to admit. He's one of those people you know? The kind of person that's always at the back of your life. Constantly there, but never really there. I met him working at my local Burger King in high school. 3:35 p.m. every day he would drift in, get his senior coffee, sit down, and drink. Lonnie is different. He could easily be in his early 40s, or his late 70s. His grey, matted hair sits on the top of his head like a dead animal, and his face is covered in sad blisters and scars. He wears one of those green safety vests everywhere he goes. He's even shown me the permit he has that allows him to legally wear it, like it was something to be proud of. The worst quirk about Lonnie is his terrible speech impediment. When I first met him I could barely understand a word that came out of his mouth. He has almost no teeth, and every time he speaks he starts his sentence out with a clicking sort of noise followed by words so slurred, if you don't focus on what he is saying, you surely won't understand any of it. Anyway, every day after I left school for work, I would immediately clock in and get his coffee ready. I knew how he liked it, and it became something like a tradition for us. He would come in right before the lunch rush, I would pour his coffee, and he would talk to me about his life while I barely kept up with what he was saying. His eyes would light up as he opened up to me talking about his day, like I was the only person he ever got to talk to. It may sound like I was doing something nice here, a sort of service to this poor man, who seemed to have nothing going for him. In reality, I hated him. I hated his guts. I had to be the one to talk to him every day, awkward conversation after awkward conversation. I had other responsibilities to attend to, but instead I had to babysit this man-child. Most of all, I hated his g***s. After a year of working there, I could understand him fluently. It sounds mean, but I never signed up to be this man's emotional support. I'm working at Burger King. The last thing I want to do is connect with the customers. After high school, I left Burger King for a slightly better position as a cashier. I thought I had finally left my terrible memories of Burger King and Lonnie, but I was wrong. Shortly after taking up my newfound position, the glint of a green vest came through my lane. There he was, Lonnie in all his glory, and a big smile on his face. As we caught up, I took notice to the products he was purchasing. It struck me odd really, only 4 items. Sweet potatoes chips, dehydrated pineapple, chunky peanut butter, and strawberry apple sauce. There may be nothing particular special about his purchase, however these were the exact groceries that I buy. The same brand, everything. We continue conversing, but everything seemed off. Lonnie was smiling at me intently like he normally does, but his eyes. Something about his eyes were off. It was as if he thought this was going to be the last day he will ever see me. I finish checking him out, and wave him off hearing him muttering to himself as he stutters away. I almost felt bad for the old man, but shortly forgot about the incident, until the next day, where I found him in my lane again. With the same exact food selection as the previous day. You finish all that food already, Lonnie? I said. It's for a friend, he replied, spitting in my direction slightly. I shrugged my shoulders, and waved him on as I handed him his receipt. Several hours later my shift ended, and I decided to pick up some groceries myself. This time I made sure to skip out on the 4 items Lonnie seemed to have become interested in. I grabbed some honey smoked ham, jalapeno chips, sliced cheese, and a bag of Honey Crisp apples. The next day began, and here came Lonnie again with his groceries. He began putting his food up on the belt, when I felt the color run out of my face like melting crayons. Honey smoked ham, sliced cheese, jalapeno chips, and Honey Crisp apples were put onto my belt. Another beautiful day, ha, he said, his lips drenched in saliva. I didn't say anything, I only stared into this man's crazed eyes. Was he watching me? As I finished checking him out, and watched him walk away, I looked down, and noticed the time on my monitor. 3:35 p.m. I never felt more paranoid leaving work that night. I checked behind me, to my sides, everything, everywhere. I didn't know what was happening. It continued for another week. I would buy new groceries, and the next day Lonnie would appear, with those same exact groceries. By the end of the week, I couldn't sleep, I could barely breathe, I didn't know what to think. I woke up the following Saturday afternoon to the beginning of my day off, but I couldn't get the events of the last few days out of my head. Not being the kind of person to leave things stirring, I decided to do something about it, and derived a plan. It was a long shot, but I had to try it. At exactly 3 o'clock I grabbed my jacket, a cap, and left my home for Burger King. At 3:15 I parked my car and waited. 19 minutes later, and to my mild surprise, there he was, walking up through the parking lot. I shrunk down in my seat a little, as he entered the restaurant. 30 minutes later he left, and I enacted my plan. As he began walking back down the highway, I followed him. I would drive past him, park in a nearby parking lot, or side of the road, and wait for him to pass me. I would then wait about 5 minutes before driving past him again, continuing the slow, but reliable course of action I made. After about an hour of this, Lonnie turned onto a dusty, rocky road lined with trees leading up to a small trailer I could just see in the distance. I parked my car about 2 minutes up the road, got out, and began walking towards his house. I didn't really know what I was going to do once I got there. I could knock on the door and confront him, but it would be difficult to explain to him how I got there. I could spy on the house for a while, to see if he did anything suspicious. I decided I would figure it out when I got there. As I reached the dirty road that led to his trailer, I decided to follow through the trees up to his house instead. As I neared his home, I took a seat on the dirty ground, and began thinking. While I was thinking, I noticed a dirty window on the right side of his home. Perfect, I thought. I began to army crawl my way to his house, desperate not to be seen. I reached for the side of the house, and then peeked my head through the window. To this day, just thinking about what I saw inside his house brings tears of fear to my eyes. I couldn't really register what I was looking at first, but as the realization took hold, my eyes widened in terror. Pictures. Pictures everywhere. On the walls, on the floor, stacks and stacks of them in every nook and cranny of the room. Pictures. Pictures of me. And in the corner, in a rickety chair, sat Lonnie, looking directly at the window. I ducked down instantly, and ran. My heart was beating so fast it hurt, but I didn't stop. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes as I ran to my car, put the keys into the ignition, and peeled off. Speeding to my house, I flew open my front door, locked it, and immediately threw up. I called off work the next day. And the next day. And the next. I sat in my bed, with the blankets over my head, like that was going to protect me from what I had seen. I woke up the next day in a daze. The second guessing had begun. I had to have imagined it. There's no way I had seen what I saw. It wasn't possible. I looked at myself in the mirror, and laughed. I made a pot of coffee, and left for work that morning. Nothing seemed real, this was just a regular day. It wasn't until 3 p.m. when I felt ice reaching into my chest, grasping at my heart. I began sweating as I helped an elderly lady put a watermelon into her cart. 3:10, my heart is racing, the young mother I'm helping looks at me funny as her child yells for attention. 3:20, my face is white, and sweat is pouring off me as the older gentleman buying car oil asks me if I'm okay. 3:30, I'm going to pass out. 3:31, everything goes blank. 3:32, black. 3:33, black. 3:34, GE. 3:34, gay. 3:35, I open my eyes. There stood Lonnie. I could hear it coming from deep in his throat. His face was empty. His eyes, dark. I looked to my right. On my belt, laid an axe. Usually weighs more would the beast coffee knows. I passed out for real, drifting into darkness. Waking up in the hospital. I immediately told the authorities what I had seen, and the strange occurrings that had been going on. After investigating his house, they confirmed that it was abandoned, and no one had lived in it for many years. I still live my life in fear to this day, never knowing if, or when he will show up. Every now and then, when I'm alone, I feel like I can still hear the low, but steady g-g-gs of his broken throat, instilling fear into me that I cannot explain.